Hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to the EC2 Essentials lecture. We're now going to start doing the EC2 section, and we're going to really, it's a good section to be in because we're going to start getting our hands dirty and start logging into some EC2 instances. So this is where the course goes from being quite theoretical to becoming very practical. So what is EC2? Amazon's Elastic Cloud Compute is a web service that provides resizable compute capacity in the cloud. Amazon's EC2 reduces the time required to obtain and boot new server instances to minutes, allowing you to quickly scale capacity both up and down as your computing requirements change. Now, I've been in IT for just over 15-16 years now, and I remember a time where if we needed a new Active Directory server or a new SQL server, we had to go to HP or go to Dell, order new servers. We then had to get them delivered to our data centers. We had to get them racked. We had to do all the networking, set them up so that they're internet accessible, etc. And your provisioning times would be anywhere from 5 to 10 business days. And then I was working at Rackspace in 2010 when public cloud was first rolled out, and it was really exciting to see the capabilities of cloud, whereby instead of having a 5 to 10 day lead time, you would reduce it to literally just a couple of minutes. You can have that server up and running. So that's really what how cloud computing has changed the IT industry in the last 5 to 10 years. So Amazon's EC2 changes the economics of computing by allowing you to pay for only capacity that you actually use. Amazon's EC2 provides developers the tools to build failure-resistant applications and isolate them from common failure scenarios. So if we just look at the first section, that's the advantage of cloud computing, is it's a utility-based model. So you only, you can go and pay by the hour. So if you want to spin up a development environment and do some tests on it, and then terminate it, you're only going to pay for the 1 or 2 hours while that environment is live, as opposed to the old model where you would buy server hardware and you would be stuck with it. So let's go and have a look at the different EC2 pricing options. So free tier is the pricing option that we're using for this course. So that's where you get 735 hours free on certain micro instances. Then you've got on demand, which allows you to pay a fixed rate by the hour with no commitment. So that's your hourly billing scenario. Then you've got reserved, which provides you with capacity reservation and offers significant discounts on the hourly charge for an instance. And then you basically have a 1 year or 3 year term. So reserved is just saying I need 10 servers of this size, and I'm willing to pay either upfront or you can pay as you go for the next, but I'm contractually willing to commit for 1 to 3 years. And if you do use reserved instances, then you get massive discounts compared with on demand. And then we have spot instances, and this enables you to bid at whatever price you want to pay for instant capacity. So effectively it's like a market. You've got your bid and your ask prices, and you're basically saying I want this size EC2 instance at this rate, and when it hits this, buy it for this amount of time. And we'll have a look at that in a bit more detail. So if we look at demand versus on demand versus reserve versus spot. So on demand is just as it says on the tin, users that want low cost and flexibility of Amazon EC2 without any upfront payments or long-term commitments. So it's as and when you need it. This is suitable for applications with short-term, spiky or unpredictable workloads that cannot be interrupted. Applications being developed or tested on Amazon EC2 for the first time. Now let's have a look at reserved. So this is really meant for applications with steady state or predictable usage. So reserved might be your 3 or 4 web servers that you always want turned on, and then your on-demand instances might be as a part of an auto-scaling event. So you only need these servers as and when maybe you're doing a Black Friday special or Christmas is coming up, or any kind of sale, and your demand is going to be a lot higher. That's when you would provision maybe an additional 2 or 3 on-demand servers and leave those while your traffic volume is peaking, and then once you go back to normal, you delete your on-demand. So reserved is basically designed for applications with steady state or predictable usage, applications that require reserved capacity, and users are able to make upfront payments to reduce their total computing costs even further. We have a look at Spot. So Spot is basically designed for applications that have flexible start and end times, applications that are only feasible at very low compute prices, and users with urgent computing needs for large amounts of additional capacity. And I went to a DevOps conference earlier this year, and we were talking about Spot, and the solutions architects there were saying, if you think of Spot as spot pricing as basically a rug that can be pulled out from underneath your feet at any given time, so you can lose your spot price servers at the blink of an eye. So what you need to do is you need to architect your application so that those spot servers are writing whatever it is they're computing or doing to something that has durability, like an S3 bucket, for example. And one very good use case was a university was doing some Hadoop grid computing, and they were using a spot pricing model for this, and they were trying to, I think it was something to do with pharmaceutical industry. They were trying to do large sort of calculations on the molecules of new drugs, and basically they use Spot instances, and this would happen between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. on a Sunday night when Amazon was quite quiet. They get really good rates, and they were able to do what would normally cost them about £80 million on the normal platform. They were able to do the same calculations for around 120 or 130,000 pounds. So that's a practical example of where you would use Spot instances. It's basically for where you want to do large amounts of compute, but you've got to be aware that that compute resource can be pulled from you at any given time without any warning whatsoever. Okay, so we'll talk about EC2 on demand and the different instances that you can purchase. So there's general purpose, there's compute optimized. This is obviously for compute intensive applications. You've got your memory optimized instances. So this would be suitable for database and memory caching applications. You've got your GPU instances, which is basically for high performance parallel computing, like Hadoop, for example. Then you've got your storage optimized ones, which is basically for data warehousing as well as parallel computing as well. We'll look at the different types of storage options for EC2. So you've got your local instance storage, and then you've got EBS. Local instance storage used to be by default what you would get before EBS was invented, and that's basically where data is stored on a local instance store, and it will only persist as long as that instance is alive. So as soon as you terminate that instance, you lose all the data on that virtual hard drive. Then came along EBS-backed storage, and that's basically the default now that everybody uses. So this is data that's stored on Amazon's EBS volumes, and it persists independently for the life of the instance. And this is a question that will come up quite a bit in the exam about local instance storage versus EBS, and it's you just got to remember that data will stay on an EBS-backed volume as opposed to local instance storage, whereby it will disappear if that EC2 instance is terminated. Another thing that comes up quite often in the exam is around EBS instances and whether you can mount the same volume to two different EC2 instances, and the answer is no. Currently you can only have one EBS volume mounted to one EC2 instance. You can't use the same EBS volume and mount it to two EC2 instances. So just remember that for the exam, and I'll make sure that's in the quiz so that we basically reinforce that. Okay, so we'll just look at the different storage options for EBS. So we've got general purpose SSD. That's designed for 99.999% availability, so it's a 5.9 availability, and you do actually get this on the free tier. I believe it's up to 30 gigs currently at the time of recording. So we'll have a look at that in the next lecture where we create our EC2 instances. You get a ratio of 3 IOPS per gig, and it gives you single-digit millisecond latencies. And you also have the option to burst up to 3,000 IO for short periods. Then we've got provisioned IOPS SSD drives. This is basically designed for IO-intensive applications such as large relational or NoSQL databases. And then you've got your magnetic storage, and this is quite a bit cheaper. and it's ideal for workloads where it's accessed infrequently and applications where the lowest storage cost is important. So maybe you'd, if you had a file server where you're needing to run NTFS permissions, for example, and you didn't want to use S3 buckets, you'd probably look at using magnetic storage as opposed to SSD, because you're just going to store flat files on there and your users would access them, sort of infrequently as and when they needed. Provisioned IOPS SSD would be obviously for databases, and then your general purpose SSD can be for your test and dev databases, web servers, whatever. I've done IO tests on the general purpose and the IOPS SSD, and you do get really good performance compared to other cloud providers, so just bear that in mind. Okay, so we'll just talk about what we're going to cover in this section. So in the next lecture we're going to launch an EC2 instance, then we're going to look at our security groups, and then we're going to look at volumes and snapshots. We're then going to create an Amazon machine image, and we're also going to look around the security of what you should do when you create an Amazon machine image and share it with other people. Then we're going to look at load balancers and health checks. We're going to look at CloudWatch. Then we're going to start with the AWS command line, and we're going to look at identity access management roles with EC2. So if you remember in one of the last sections, we created an S3 role, and we're going to assign that to an EC2 instance and then access S3 buckets. We'll even create and delete S3 buckets from the command line. So that's actually lots of fun. Then we're going to look at bootstrap scripts and launch configuration groups, which is a precursor to autoscaling. So we're going to look at how we do autoscaling. And then we're going to, at a high level, look at Lambda, and there may be practical examples of Lambda to come. Right now, at the time I'm recording this video, it is in the beta release, and I'm still not on the beta user list, even though I requested it as soon as reInvent came out. So we'll just talk about it from a theoretical level, but as and when I do get access to Lambda, we'll also do a practical example of it. Okay, so that concludes this lecture. We'll go ahead and complete this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.